It's the info. It's the man with the info. Whatever you wanna know, come join the man with the info show. It's the info. It's the man with the info. Whatever you wanna know, come join the man with the info show. It's the info. It's the info. Whatever you wanna know, come join the man with the info show. It's the info. We got the info. Whatever you wanna know, come join the man with the info show. It's the info man. You can call him information info man. Kicking knowledge all over this nation. Win, lose, or draw. You can bring your hate team, but if you want to win, please don't bring your debate team. We talking Japanese shogun, Aztecs, old mixing African dogun.
Nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture.
Tell the truth.
We are controlling transmission.
Tell the truth.
We will control the horizontal.
Tell the truth.
We will control the vertical. We can change the...
Tell the truth.
Welcome everybody, this is Information Man. I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch my video. And for those of you that have been supporting me, I really appreciate that. As you all know, there's been debate on YouTube, particularly black YouTube, around the whole issue of ADOS, African Descendants of Slaves, and whether black people should label ourselves in that manner. Does it make us look like we are trying to marginalize ourselves, underestimate and undervalue ourselves by linking ourselves to our ancestors who some were slaves? Now, I know that some of the first people to come here in slavery was indentured servants, which were Europeans who came over from Europe. They were the criminals of Europe, which is why they were put in indentured servitude. And we do know that even those Europeans that were put into indentured servitude, we know that they were also paid some form of reparations. Okay? Now, we do know that America has a history with this reality, this history based in slavery. We've heard of the triangular slave trade. You had many players involved in the triangular slave trade. You had the Arabs, the Portuguese, the Europeans. You had the Spanish, and the reality is, in some cases, you had some African tribes or some in the continent of Africa who had involvement in our slavery. That would be Ghana. If I'm not mistaken, Ghana is one of the countries in Africa that issued an apology for what has happened to black people in America. And in some cases, they're talking about offering us citizenship in Ghana. We know that Nigeria has a history in their involvement in slavery. So the triangular slave trade was a global economic power force that fueled the economy, not only of America, what we think is America, but the whole world. So the whole world was involved in this, in the reality and history of slavery. We know that many of our ancestors who were put on ships, packed in like sardines and sent to this world we call America, particularly most of them were dropped off in South America. About 4%, if my math is right, were dropped off in what we call North America today, America. Or not dropped off in North, dropped off, 4% dropped off to America, but they were brought over here to this part of North America, and then they were dropped off in what we call South America, particularly, if you're not familiar with this, El Salvador, Brazil, was the gateway for many black people coming into this part of the hemisphere, this part of the world, as we know as South America today, which is why a good majority of black people in the diaspora are in South America, not just America. We're in Jamaica. And the reason why you have black folks globally all over the world, particularly in the Caribbean areas like Jamaica, or in the Caribbean in general, is because the world was hooked on, particularly Europeans, on sugar. And they needed, sugar was the dope of its time. And they were moving slaves to work on sugar plantations in the earlier development of slavery. We know that in the 13 colonies of the United States, as we know it today, Virginia was one of the first colonized areas, we call it Virginia today, where black people were dropped off into slavery as we know it in America. And then you had places like North Carolina. You have the good ship Jesus, as people have heard, that was brought over, and so on and so forth. What I've done, what I'm going to do on this video is I'm going to play a compilation of different pieces of footage of different people, our people, black people around the world, who are all speaking for themselves, for their issues, their grievances, demanding reparations as it relates to their culture and what they went through in their experience. My argument is that black people in America, we have all but the right to address our grievances and our issues that relates to our culture, what we've gone through, our four-ways and our no-ways and our forefathers. So this is no slide to people that are Jamaican, people that are Haitian, black folks over here that are from the UK, because all of these groups that I'm just naming, I'm going to show a video about the UK. You have black folks, black sisters and brothers in the UK that are demanding reparations from the Parliament, from the Europeans in the UK. You have the Haitians, and I'm going to say this again, we owe a debt of gratitude to the Haitians, because if it was not for the Haitian Revolution, America would not look the way it does today, because the whole middle part of this country had to be sold off by the French, because the Haitians put up a hell of a fight to the point where the Europeans, in this case the French, Napoleon himself, had to give up and sell off what we call the Louisiana Purchase, which was the whole middle half of the country. Okay, so that's very important to understand a part of this history. Okay, everybody out there that's supporting the channel, I appreciate you being here.
Tell the truth.
Okay, very much so. So this is a little bit of a history commentary in this presentation that I'm giving. So we understand it. So what my points and I'm making is that even the Haitians, and I've got video footage that I'll show of that on this video, where the Haitians are demanding that the French pay them reparations. Because if you don't know, the Haitians have been paying France a reparation. They have been in debt to France for whooping France's ass in their revolution. Okay? And they fought the French in the spirit of Ogun. Ogun is sort of like a spirit that the Haitians would call on when they're in battle. Now, very important, the Caribbean. I'm going to play a footage from a sister who breaks down how the Caribbean was so damaging to black folks when they were dropped off in what we call the Caribbean. That there were situations where there was malnutrition, black women were not being fed, black men were being tortured, were being mistreated, to the point where black women would not have proper menstrual cycles. She's going to talk about that a little bit. So the brothers and sisters in the Caribbean are battling and fighting to get reparations from what happened to them from those European forces that put them in, that oppressed them. Okay? When you look at the United Nations, from what I understand in doing my research, the United Nations currently right now, there is a large contingency of black folks that are involved in the United Nations who are saying that black people in America, we deserve some form of reparations. Okay? So I'm going to play a small video from a sister who is part of the United Nations. I think she's a French sister. So there is no reason for us as black people to be ashamed. I know there's some that will say we shouldn't associate ourselves with slavery. And see, this is the funny thing about it. Every other group in America, Asians, Jewish people, every other group, they never forget their history. Jewish people who went through a hell of a Holocaust will tell you, they'll tell their kids, never forget. They never, so being and remembering one's history does not say that you are inferior. It does not hold you back. It is the understanding that you must understand your history so that you don't be doomed to repeat that history once again because of your ignorance to the knowledge of that history. It seems to me that every time black people in America speak out for what we need and what is important for us, we have to have some type of guilt, some type of shame. We're always the first to be concerned about how it impacts other people. And I think in some ways our emotions and our empathy and sympathy, although it is a good character, it also works against us because it holds us back from really being honest about who we are in America and our culture and where we're trying to go. Now, do I believe that reparations is going to be guaranteed to us? No. Do I believe that we have to fight for it? Yes. Anything worth having, you must fight for. Nothing will be given to us. If we simply lay down, sleep at the wheel and just say, oh, we're never going to get reparations, then we're never going to get it. We don't know what the possibilities are. We may not get it today. We may not be alive to get reparations, okay? But very well our children can benefit from it down the line in the future. There's a possibility. Now I know, let me just say here, how many of you are familiar with the Commission to Study and Develop Reparations for African American? It's an act. It's H.R. 40, okay? Now H.R. 40 is put together by Elijah Cummings. Some of the representatives, they're doing a commission to study and develop the reparation proposal to African American Act, is what it's called, to address the inhumane, injustice, cruelty, brutality, the inhumane of slavery in the United States of these Americans and the 13 American colonies, okay, between, if I'm saying this correct, 1619 and 1865, and to assemble a commission to study and consider a national apology and proposal for reparations for the institution of slavery. Slavery was an institution in American society, okay? It is subsequently the factors of racial, economics, and discrimination against African Americans and the impact of these forces on living Americans to make a recommendation, okay, to the Congress appropriate for the proposal of reparations for black people. So from what I understand, Congressman and John Conyers, I believe, was involved in this as well. He was the main person to bring this to the reality. And you have Elijah Cummings as well. From what I understand from the last time I heard from Elijah Cummings, they won't even get this out. They can't even get this in committee to actually discuss. So this is showing you that there is a lot of uphill battle. But if we shut our mouths, we do not fight the power, we do not speak upon it, then we don't get anything. Closed mouths do not get fed. This is very important. There is no question in my mind that we do deserve reparations. I know folks are going to debate about, well, how much do we get? Do we get money? I think that reparations, in my opinion, should also come in a form of institutionalized systems. I believe that, one, black people should not have to pay for college tuition if you are college bound. I believe, two, that black people should be exempt from all taxes. We shouldn't have to pay taxes. Okay. Now, does that mean that we should benefit from taxes? Hell yeah. Our ancestors fought in every war this country's ever had. We've paid a heavy price, and black folks still pay a price today. Okay. I just believe that we shouldn't have to pay taxes. I believe that if there was a war where they brought back a draft like they did during Vietnam, I think black people should be exempt from all military service. This is no shade to people that are in the military. Of course, there are benefits to get from being in the military when you're able to discharge from the military. But I think that black people should be exempt from that. We should be exempt from certain institutional or constitutional things in the society that's economic driven. I think that if you institutionalize reparations for black people, that's a way that you can make sure that everyone benefits. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Jewish people got reparations from America, and I believe the majority of what happened to Jewish people happened in Germany. I think the Germans are paying them. European nations have been paying them. I believe America pays Jewish people reparations because, if I'm not mistaken, it was Wall Street invested in the Holocaust, and we know that IBM, the computer company, was responsible for creating the numbers that were stamped on their bodies. Okay, we know that Japanese who were citizens of this country were put in internment camps because they were deemed criminals, war criminals, but they were living here in America. And there's a lot of black communities. I know in San Francisco, in the Fillmore area, that was a Japanese community, and they rounded the Japanese up, put them in camps, took all their property. Well, Japanese people were given reparations for what happened to them. But you didn't see them crying about, we don't want to be deemed as having ancestors that were put in camps, right? Everyone else gets something, but black people were told that we're whining when we want something. Native American tribes have benefited from reparations, and these same Native American tribes, like Cherokee, black folks are always claiming to be Cherokee. Even Cherokee Native tribes who were also involved in our enslavement, they were bounty hunters. They would hunt after black people when black people were running away from plantations. Many Cherokee, full-blooded Cherokee Indians would hunt after us and do terrible things to us. Now, that does not negate that you have legitimate black people who are part Native American and black, have Cherokee blood in them. But guess what? A lot of these Native American tribes are being discriminative towards black people who have a claim to Native heritage. And you have Cherokee Indians being discriminative towards black people that are Native. So I believe that even black people that are part Native American, they have a stake to claim in this whole ADOS. Okay? Now, my ancestor was a freeman, which is another form of someone who was black and Native American. My mother did research. We were able to see that he claimed land. He claimed the nation that he was a part of, Chickasaw. And a lot of freemen today, and even then, were not being recognized, and they can't make their claim to get money and proceeds afforded to them because you have some Native American tribes that are being discriminative towards even the black Native American people. So once again, black people, black folks, we have no friends, we have lots of enemies, and nobody is checking for us. Okay, a lot of these other groups who we feel we have to be sort of like, let's be diplomatic about, they're not hollering for our interests. They're hollering for their interests. So what I'm basically saying is there is nothing for us to be ashamed of to want to address an ill. Do I believe, once again, that we're going to get this reparation like right now? No, because it's going to take a hell of a lot of work, and I don't think America, frankly, wants to admit their wrong and their involvement in our oppression from an economic and institutionalized standard. You ask yourself, well, what kind of check should everybody get? Because, you know, people are going to spend their money up if they get a check. I don't give a damn if people spend their money on whatever they want to spend the money on. The bottom line is, it does not change the fact that we are due something. Then there are those that would say, well, if they give us money and an apology for slavery, then therefore we can't say anything anymore. Guess what? I don't give a damn, because they're not giving us an apology and they don't care about what we went through right now. So if they don't care about us right now and they give us a check and they don't care, it's a circular argument. That's the reality that we live in. It does not change that our ancestors worked hard. This country was built off of slavery. Then you had Jim Crow. You had black codes. You had black men that were hung like fruit on trees in the South. You had black men that fought in every war going back to the Revolutionary War in this country. Black men that fought in World War I, World War II, came back home with uniforms on. A lot of your riots that happened in this country were because of black men coming home from war saying, you're not going to treat me any kind of way. And a lot of times you had white men who could not stand seeing black men with uniforms on, and they would try to hang them and kill them. You've had young men like Emmett Till, who was mistreated, poorly mistreated. Okay? We have a history of institutionalized racism, where black people were kept out of certain opportunities, whether it be in job opportunities, whether it be in school opportunities. We know that you had the affirmative action programs, which were supposed to be for the benefit of, once again, descendants of slaves, black people. And we know that white women and many other groups have benefited from affirmative action programs. And some people are coming over here today from other parts of the world, and they are benefiting from a lot of what our ancestors laid down, from a lot of the sacrifices of our ancestors and our people and our grandfathers and great-grandfathers. They come over here, they're benefiting, and then there's the disrespect being given to us, okay, between us and ourselves. Now, I know that this whole issue, people think that it's divisive, right? Because somehow it seems like we're dividing and conquering between this whole thing, between I'm an American black, you're a Caribbean black, you're a European black, whatever. Like I said, I'm going to show you videos. It's going to be a long video, folks. I'm showing you some clips where you have all these other groups that are in America that are fighting for the oppression of what they have gone through. You have black people in Brazil, okay, who are speaking Portuguese, who are also fighting the battle against in Brazil for being recognized, for being treated as humans, right? They're fighting the same battle because in Brazil, a lot of black folks in Brazil, they've got the same color complex that we have. Some of them don't want to be identified as black because in Brazil, when you identify as black, they say that that's having one foot in the slave quarters again. Well, we got black folks in America who have the same type of ideology. We don't want to deal with the term ADOS because it connects us to slavery. It connects us to a sad and disappointing part of our history, and we want to disassociate ourselves from a poor part of our history. We want to disengage from that. This is what I would say. And I was on live streams, and we had debates about this. I think simply that one of our problems as black people is that we want to disassociate ourselves from history. And then on the other hand, we'll use fancy slogans like ADOS. And one of our biggest problems as a people is that we get caught up in highfalutin slogans. We get caught up in symbolism too damn much. We get caught up in the Messiah complex. We're looking for a Messiah, some black leader, some Negro, some person to lead us when we can lead ourselves. And that you are the best leader that you can be, you, when you look at yourself in the mirror and you can do for self. That's more important than anything else. You are the leader that you're looking for. So I think at the end of the day, we should be black first. Okay? Because at the end of the day, we're black people. That's how we talk to each other in our community. And these slogans are sort of just what they are. They're symbols and they're slogans, but they don't make the needle move. We as black people in America know our history. We should fight for what is right for us. It does not mean that we're anti-black people from the Caribbean, black people that's from South America. We're not anti any of those things, and we should not be ashamed to be able to stand on our own square of our history. We're simply saying that as black people in America, this is due to us. We have paid a way, we have paid a sacrifice. If I was to go over to the continent of Africa or go to Brazil and tell black folks in Brazil as a brother from America about their issues, or brothers in the UK about their issues, or brothers in the Caribbean about their issues, the truth of the matter is I would be seen as an outsider. Getting involved in their business that has to do with unique circumstances to where they live. Let me also bring up another thing that's very important. I must bring this up. For those of you who are big Obama fans, or happy that we had Obama as president, let me let you know something. People keep saying, oh, it never can happen. Everybody's gotten a reparation but black people in America. Let me read this to you. United States government to pay $492 million to 17 American Indian tribes. This was September 27, 2016. This was part of the Obama administration. The United States has agreed to pay a total of $492 million to 17 Native American tribes mismanaging natural resources. Other tribes assorted, according to an attorney who files most of the suits. Now, the settlement marks the end of a push by the Obama administration to resolve what the United States says is more than 100 lawsuits, totaling more than $3.3 billion brought by American Indians, individual tribes governing against the federal government policies, reaching a settlement. So basically, under the Obama administration, you had Native American tribes, a bunch of them, 17 as I read there, that were suing the United States government, demanding tribute, not tribute, well, you can call it tribute, demanding reparations for resources that were stolen, all these different things. Remember the Trail of Tears? I believe it was President Andrew Jackson who went against a court order by the Supreme Court of this country at that time, and he took Native people across the country, and it was deadly. And that's why you have a lot of Native Americans in some of these border states in the southwestern part of the country, like New Mexico, parts of, these kind of areas, Nevada, in these areas. They moved them off of their fertile land, put them on the worst land, on these what we call reservations, which are the worst land, and they took from them. Well, black people, we've experienced that too, okay? Slavery, Jim Crow. Oh, not to mention, what do you call that? Sharecropping. How you became a slave back to the land that you were a slave on by the white man would give you the land on credit, would give you seed on credit, and if you couldn't make do with your crops, now you owe them, you're in debt to them, right? So all these tricks, institutionalized racism towards black people, redlining, keeping us out of neighborhoods, keeping us out of housing, proper education, proper nutrition. All these things have been systematically have come at black people in America, which is why we have every right. So when people say, oh, it's only about, oh, well, you can't identify with the oppression, you can't identify with who were your ancestors in slavery. No. We deserve reparations not only because of our ancestors in slavery, we deserve reparations for what has happened also to our ancestors that are not that far apart from us, our great-grandfathers, our grandfathers, our great-uncles. So we can trace our history back to what happened to our own family members in Jim Crow. Okay? Which is why you had all that civil rights movement with the marching. So we can trace back the mistreatment of black people in the histories long far gone ago and in the present day. So that negates the argument, in my opinion, that we can't get a reparation because we can't identify who would get the money, because we got mixed race people, we got white. I don't give a damn. The bottom line is we got enough data, enough history to be able to fight for this. Now, the Native Americans got their money from our first black president, as we called him, because they took lawsuits out. So the bottom line is the squeaky wheel gets the oil. If we do not speak up, stand out, and fight for what we deserve, we're going to get lost. We're going to be lost in the shuffle. And let me also say, whether you use the term ADOS or not, I really think we should think black first, and we should really get out of all these slogans and really just say what it is. We don't need fancy slogans at the end of the day to identify what we have gone through. What I want to do in my presentation as I go forward, let me read something else to you. Let me get a definition of what reparations is as it relates to slavery, okay? Reparations for slavery is the idea that some form of compensation payment needs to be made to the descendants, okay? Descendants of Africans who had been enslaved as part of the Atlantic slave trade. The most notable demand for reparations have been made in the United Kingdom. Like I told you, black people all over the world are fighting for what has happened to them where they live. So why not us here in America? Made in the United Kingdom and the United States Caribbean. and African states from which slaves were taken have also made reparation demands. So even in Africa, in certain parts of Africa, they're making demands about reparations that's due them. In South Africa, you've got Africans in South Africa saying, we want our land back. The Dutch, the Europeans came over and took their land. They're demanding the land. Okay? So should we as black people in America be bent out of shape because South Africans are saying we want our land and our money? No. Then you got, throughout Africa, you've got this movement where people are saying we want these Europeans out of here. This is our land. This is our heritage. It is our birthright, black people. We have every right because other of our brothers and sisters in the diaspora of the world are making the same damn demands. So there's no need for us to get up on panels and say, oh, we're dividing. Nobody's telling the Caribbean blacks, the UK blacks, the Haitians, and anyone else in the world, or even the black folks in South America, not to demand a reparation by those Europeans that have a history and have oppressed them. That's the point I'm trying to make here. Okay? And whether we want to call ourselves ADOS or Black First, at the end of the day, it's not really about the symbolism or the semantic. It's about what is the truth. Okay? What is the truth?
Tell the truth.
Okay? And these are the truth matters. So that is a definition. And let me just read further. Excuse me, folks. I'm a little bit of cough. Let me have some of my protein drink. I had a little bit of a workout earlier today. So let me just read further here. These reparations are speculative that they have never been paid. So the reparations to black people have never been paid. They can be contrasted with the comparison and emancipation money paid by governments to slave owners when slavery was, abolished. Okay? So everybody has had a foothold in our slavery. Okay? Everyone. And so we have every right to feel the way we feel. I don't think it's about being divisive. I would hope that our Caribbean brothers, our African brothers and sisters will understand that this is a battle and a fight that we as black people in America are speaking upon and that we want. Ever since I was about 18 years old, when I was in college, I've been a part of this battle as it relates to reparations. I've signed many petitions. I've been part of organizations when I was in college talking about the issues of reparations. And do black people deserve it? Yes, we do. There's no doubt in my mind. It is a compensation payment that has not been rendered to us. Now, black people, when it comes to 40 acres and a mule, and I was talking to someone about this before, whether there's things in America that we were promised in America that we were never given. Then there were things that were given, like 40 acres and a mule, and then they were taken back from us. So at the end of the day, we don't have the generational wealth. I think these are some of the reasons why we don't have generational wealth. Plus, we don't have, we haven't built enough businesses, enough infrastructure for ourselves. And I think that with reparations, if you institutionalize them, it could help us to build wealth. Okay? So I personally don't think it's about having a fat check. I think it needs to be institutionalized where black people don't have to pay taxes. Education is free for us. Let's say I want to go and buy a house. There should be certain things that I should be exempt from when purchasing a home. Institutionalize these reparations. That is my opinion about this. Also, when you look at Jewish people and how they're getting paid for what happened to them, everybody has forgotten about the blacks that were in Germany, that were also some of the first people that Hitler exterminated. Nobody talks about the black people in Germany that were killed even before the actual Jews. And there were black people that were Jewish as well. Nobody talks about those black people that were killed over there. And I don't think they got any reparations. Okay, hello? So this is a global situation. And we need to remember that. So with that said, I'm going to end my presentation because I've gone on for some time. I'm going to play some of these videos. Oh, I forgot. Most importantly, let me play and give a shout out to my main man, BGS, and that whole crew over there on his channel. I'm going to play you a soundbite from BGS and what they were saying on his channel about this issue. And I 100% agree with what was said. And let me go ahead and play this.
Tell the truth.
And here we go. Hope you all, BGS and everybody over there, I had to play this soundbite because I believe that you were all on point. So shout out to BGS and the whole crew that was on his channel when they played this. This is a fantastic soundbite, and here it goes.
I'm not being disrespectful to you. My problem, one of the questions that's going in my mind is like, a lot of times you see here in America, I wasn't born here.
Okay.
What I'm seeing is that there's this frustration, and it builds up, and then it explodes. And one of the things that I'm seeing with this ADOS is that it's worrying me because of that. Because what you have people, okay, everybody here can discuss a subject and agree or disagree. But on the street, when people start discussing things, guns start coming out.
Let me ask you something, D.
I'm still here.
No.
So I'll defer to the elder first, and then if I need to, I'll address what you.
Okay. Let me ask you a question, D. Now, when immigrants come in, where do they come? Do they come into the white neighborhoods or the black neighborhoods?
Black neighborhoods.
I mean, all immigrants, no matter what color they are, right?
Yes.
Other than riots, where all bets are off, have black people ever burned down a store?
Oh yeah.
They burned down stores other than riots.
No.
Have they ever stabbed, attacked a whole group of people that are actually doing business, not even living, but doing business in their neighborhoods?
No.
Have they failed to support those businesses in their neighborhoods?
No.
No. So if we haven't done that to people that don't look like us, don't even talk our language, have nothing in common with us, right? Even though we have vast disagreements with them, right?
Right.
Why would we do that to black folks that look like us?
Nice.
Where do you get that from? Where in Black America's history have we done that?
We never have.
Well, we have never done it before. But in the situation that we have now, where the argument is it's not against, say, the Caucasian who is holding us down, but it's between.
Tell the truth. No, it's not. No, it's not. Basically, ADOS is toward our white superiors.
Oh, okay. Well, that's my misunderstanding.
No,
okay.
But we have basically expressed it. In other words, we're saying that before you give anybody else, immigrants, people that are non descendants of slaves, you have to address us. That we fought for, that you were supposed to make whole and correct for the damage that you have done to us. In other words, us first.
Thank you. That's all.
That's all it is.
We're not is like DE, and this is no shade to you. I'm actually glad that you brought up what you brought up, because in my mind, it really speaks not so much to our motivations, but to the ideas about what and who we are in the minds of our black immigrant brothers and sisters. I think it's telling that at this moment that you see the uplift, you see us taking the reins and control of our narrative, fighting and standing on our interests, questioning the system to act in whatever fashion they wanted to toward us. I think it's telling that you're seeing a level of fear coming from black immigrants that black people usually only see coming from our white
people. You know what's deep? It's deeper than that, Mark. You know why they're saying this? Because if the situation was reversed, we're in their country, guess what they would do to us?
Oh, facts. Because that's an uncomfortable, real ice cold truth that BGS is speaking on right now. If we was in other places, let's say Zimbabwe or Cote d'Ivoire,
or Ghana,
right?
Because in Ghana, if you're an American and you look just like them, guess what they call you? Albaruni, white man.
They call you a white man. All I have to do is open my mouth, and I'm classified as a white man, regardless of how much love I have for the place, regardless of what's in my heart when I go there, any of that. I'm automatically judged to be aligned with our so-called collective oppressor.
Tell the truth. Tell the truth.
So there you have it. You got Brother BGS. You know what he does over there on his channel. He has those 8-hour streams. He gets the brothers on there, and they break things down philosophically. And I have to agree with what I heard Brother BGS saying on that audio, and some of the brothers, what they were saying, that black people identifying our issues should not be any shade to our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, because our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, when it comes to their issues, they're going to identify themselves. Okay, like what, for example, when I've experienced this personally, when our African brothers and sisters come over here, especially those from Nigeria, when they come to America, they don't necessarily call themselves black. They say, I'm Nigerian, or they will identify with the tribe that they come from. You know, in Africa, a lot of folks, they identify with tribes. They don't get caught up into the whole thing about black and all. It's more about who they identify in terms of their tribe, their culture. Okay? Well, in America, black people, we identify ourselves, as I said, black. And therefore, we are identifying an issue that is pertinent and sensitive to us as a people. Now, whether it alienates other people, that to me, that's their problem. It's not our problem. And we should not be ashamed. Black people, we're the most accepting people. People move into our neighborhoods and we will accept them. As you heard BGS say, black people do not have a history of rioting, destroying, attacking, and oppressing black people who have come here from the diaspora of the world, and they move into their neighborhoods. They will segregate themselves to their neighborhoods. They will do their business. And black folks, we have never done anything destructive towards them. Okay? And so, and people are not going to like what I'm saying right here. A lot of folks have been riding off of the coattails of what our ancestors did, whether it be pre-civil rights, civil rights movement, everything that we've done. We have made the streets and have paved the roads to make things safe for people to come over here and benefit from the life that they're benefiting from. When it comes to things like affirmative action, and you have our African brothers and sisters who come over here and go to our historical black colleges, well, they are benefiting off of laws and things that have been put in place that we have struggled for, and they're also attending institutions that were created by black folks who have struggled in the civil rights movement, struggled for equality and justice, even though we live in America where there's lots of injustice. Okay? So it's very important to understand. I think he made good points. Now, I talked to Brother Art. Art's a professor. He teaches. And let's listen to a little bit of my interview, what I did with Brother Art. Here we go.
Brother Art, you've been hearing and we've been observing everything that's been happening on YouTube, particularly black YouTube, about the whole issues around ADOS, whether we should identify with that. There's issues about whether we're going to get reparations, whether we should focus on that. I want to get your opinion about, your true opinion about this movement, if it is a true movement. What's your opinions, brother?
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure if it's a movement or not, but whatever it takes for us to come together to solve any kind of problems in our community or a community that we identify with as a people, I think that we have to make sure that we come up with all kinds of solutions and put things together like pieces of a puzzle and find ways to be able to clear things up and make peace with everyone that's even considered part of our diaspora. So I think this is a good start.
Now, Brother, you're a professor. You've been teaching for years. You deal with our youth. How do you think this would impact our youth? We do live in a world where our children are going to school with other race of people. There's arguments about how do you identify what's black, because we have people that have mixed heritage. You see a perspective as a teacher. Can you touch on that briefly, brother?
Well, right now, I mean, the worst crayon in the crayon box is the darkest ones.
There you go.
And a lot of people leave that in the box, even your own people. So you even have our own people trying to find ways of not saying that they're black, you know, or not even from the continent. So when you're able to get something in place to where, you know, people can hang their hat on and say that this is me, this is my legacy, this is what I'm proud of, that's when you can start, you know, getting the ball rolling and making sure that you can find your way back to greatness and making sure that everybody is real about who they are and what they're saying. Right now, a lot of things are happening because there's missing pieces of information that's not been filled in either yet or properly. So of course there's going to be disarray and chaos. So eventually you're going to have to roll your sleeves up, put this stuff together, stop waiting for things to happen automatic, and then make sure after the work is done, you can sit back and watch the glory of what you put in. So.
Tell the truth.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this long presentation that I put on. But prior to this, not prior, but in the conclusion of my presentation right now, I'm going to play some videos to put it all in perspective. These are historical videos, or these are videos that's showing you what's going on around the world, what's going on as it relates to this issue, or what has gone on as it relates to the issue of reparations and the whole issue about what we are now people are coining as saying the term ADOS. That's the hashtag. Once again, I'm going to say it again. I'm not big into slogans. I just think that we as black people in America know what the issues are. We don't really need fancy slogans to distinguish ourselves. We are black. We know what we've gone through. We know we are aware enough about our history to identify ourselves, because every other group in the world and in America, they always do something distinctive to identify themselves. I think that some may have a problem with the term because some would say that we're not slaves anymore, so why would you identify yourself with slavery? But to disidentify ourselves from the history of slavery is to say that slavery never happened, or that we didn't have ancestors that weren't oppressed by slavery. And that doesn't mean that we didn't have black people that didn't come over here as non-slaves. I mean, I love the book Ivan Van Sertima that came before Columbus 800 BC, where you had Africans that were trading gold and silver, were traveling over here. I think a lot of the people that were over here thought that they were gods. They made statues of them, those stone heads that they found in Mexico. You had reports of black men who had spears with tipped gold on it. So we know that our history is more than just slavery and Jim Crow and plantation, that black people ruled this planet. We've been around for thousands of years. So we know that our history is more glorious in the back of us than it has been in the front of us, because there's so many things that were accomplished prior to where we are in the 21st century. Okay? So I'm going to be the first to admit it. Our history is not just slavery, but that's another piece of it, and we have to acknowledge it, not only because we need to know our history, but we need to also realize that this, not only America, but this world owes us a reparation. No doubt in my mind, because of what they've done to our ancestors and how these countries, particularly America, has had the success that it's had. Let's not mention the fact that there were black inventors. And if it had not been for the inventions that black men and women created, where would this world be today? And where would America be? It was a black man, Gary Morgan, who created the stoplight when you drive in your car. It was a black man who created the ice box that cools your food. There was a black man who created mechanisms for trains to connect to each other. The third rail was created by a black man. Computers that we're using today, cell phones, all this comes out of the black mind. And not to mention cocaine that comes from the continent of Africa. So we can chew gum and ride a bike at the same time. We can still do what we got to do as black people in America while at the same time addressing these types of issues. We can be multilateral in everything that we do to accomplish overall goals. Now we can, because God gave us a brain and a mind to be able to conquer and do anything that we put our minds to. If we can believe, we can achieve. Does not mean that I'm expecting them to give us a check, expecting them to make us whole. I'm not expecting, but see, there's an old saying, you cannot have power without power wills nothing without demand. If we do not make up demand, we do not will power. So I hope you enjoy a few of these video clips that I have on here. And I want to thank everybody out there for listening. This is the Information Man.
Contemporary police killings and the trauma it creates are reminiscent of the racial terror lynching of the past. Impunity for state violence has resulted in the current human rights crisis and must be addressed as a matter of urgency. Racial bias and disparities in the criminal justice system, mass incarceration, and the thought on crimes policy has disproportionately impacted African Americans. Mandatory minimum sentencing, disproportionate punishment of African Americans, including the death penalty, are of grave concern. There is a profound need to acknowledge that the transatlantic slave trade was a crime against humanity, and among the major sources and manifestations of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance, and that Africans and people of African descent were victims of this act, continue to be victims of their consequences. Past injustice and crimes against African Americans need to be addressed with reparatory justice. The working group urged Congress to expedite the passing of all pending criminal justice reform bills, including the End Racial Profiling Act, the Second Chance Reauthorization Act, and welcomes the bipartisan support for the Sentencing Reform and Correction Act, with, among other things, proposed to drastically reduce the use of mandatory minimum
by simply saying that if you hear about reparations, get this very firmly fixed in your mind. You're not here for a parlor discussion. It's not something to talk about that's nice. If you don't get reparations, black folk, you're through in this country. Let me be that very specific for you. You see, what's happening to black Americans is that black Americans have been systematically, socially engineered into the lowest level of a real-life monopoly game. You do not own and control a sufficient amount of anything to be competitive in America. And you've been marginalized now for 400 years. You're getting ready to be buried. You can get buried underneath a whole broad groups of ambiguous groupings. That's everything from culture groups, language groups, and gender groups. You're going down. It's no longer an issue. You better get reparations and get it fast. Now, to get reparations, one of the things I've been trying to do now for 30 years, beginning with the state of Florida, when Governor Reuben Askew put me over education, when they had no blacks in politics in Florida, was to write the first affirmative action plan in the United States, and that was written to be reparations for black folk in 1971. And George Bush Jr., I guess, what's his name, Jed Bush just killed it off about 6 months ago. But what's happening now is that what I'm trying to do is create a Harvest Institute that would try to take all my colleagues here and as much as possible try to give you new points of information to take you outside the box. Part of the problem we got in trying to deal with reparations and a lot of the other racial issues in the country is that we keep trying to think and find solutions inside the box. There are no solutions inside the box for black folk. You got to get outside and try to find and get a long-term perspective and a long view on it. And that's what the Harvest Institute is in existence for, and that's what they're going to stay in existence for. Now, the reason you cannot win, as I said, is that you've been locked into this low level of a real-life monopoly game. You do not own and control enough of wealth. See, in 1860, for instance, black folk, as a direct result of slavery, had an ownership. When you were 98% slaves, you had an ownership of 1/2 of 1% of this nation's wealth in 1860 on the eve of the Civil War. Now, this is the richest country in the world, the most capitalistic country in the world. And here you are 140 years after slavery when you're supposedly 100% free and you still only have 1/2 of 1% of this nation's wealth. You cannot compete. The typical average white person in America has 3,500 times more money than you have. And that's not true only of blacks in America, it's true of the world internationally. What's happening right now is blacks is a marginalized, subordinated class of people all over the earth. You have 1/2 of 1% of the wealth in this nation. The same thing is true all over the world. In the world, there's approximately $392 trillion worth of wealth on the earth. And black folk around the world have less than 1% ownership of it. That includes all the African countries. That includes Brazil, Caribbean, and America. You don't own enough control of anything. Whites control almost 100% of all the wealth, power, resources, privileges, and controls of all levels of government. You're playing a game you can't win. You got to get reparations. Now, how are you going to get it? Let me run through 3 or 4 things very quickly because I don't want to take up the time here. First thing you must do, I've heard it mentioned already, we got to commit a national campaign all over this country to start publicizing the issue of reparations for black folk. Not as something nice, but as a necessity, period. That means every living soul, every organization, every institution in this country must begin to start promoting reparations for black folk all over this country. That's level 1. It's a massive, massive promotion of reparations for black folk. Second level, level 2. What we must do at second level 2 now is to start having facts-finding hearings. You must have facts-finding hearings all over this country. And you're going to have facts-finding hearings on at least 2 different levels. One is you're going to go after facts-finding about what roles governments have played in the reparations, in the slavery trade against black folk, and the enslavement of black folk, the marginalization of black folk. And that should break down into 2 levels. One is to investigate all levels of domestic governments, that's city, county, federal, and state governments. And the second group would go after international. So you should have 2 groups of black folk in this country exploring and fact-finding on what roles government have played, one domestically and one internationally. On the left-hand side, you should be doing the same thing for the domestic side. You should be going after the private sector. You should be going after all the private corporations in the United States, what roles they played and how they benefited directly from slavery. And also, on the same side, you must go after all the international corporations and the roles they played and how they benefited. Now, the Harvest Institute right now, my think tank, we've already picked up one. We put out a press release on that. We're going after domestic role that major corporations played in the United States. We've already identified approximately 240 companies that are still in existence that profiteer directly and enrich themselves off of black folk. We're going after that. And what we have to do in our fact finding is be able to factuate, document the direct line between how blacks have been crippled all the way up to economically, politically, socially, and educationally, and tied into these major corporations or tied into levels of government. That's your level 2. Level 3, you must then start having a national convention in this country. And right now, I think Dorothy Tillman in Chicago is already, we talked about this. She's going to try to call one in Chicago this coming year. We must have everybody who's playing a role, like Congressman Conyers and everybody from the Congress, and Cobra, everybody should be at a national convention where we all come in there to not only energize each other, but to share information, see where we are. They're trying to set it up for this coming February, someplace in the United States, possibly Chicago. That's your 3rd level. The 4th level you should start doing is trying to get into, out of this conference should come strategies and plans and a specific role model. You got to have a model that every black can tie into, a model for reparations. Now, my model's a little different from everyone else's, and that's because I'm outside the box. I'm going to try to pull everybody else outside if I can get them. Now, most people are going to try to follow the Jewish reparations model or the Japanese model. I'm following the Indian model. The Indians are the most appropriate model if you want to track down, do anything to get reparations for black folk. Why? Because, you see, only American Indians and black folk were spelled out in the Constitution. The Indians own reservations and black folk. There's a direct lineage between those 2 groups. And if you really want to track and get reparations, the easiest and quickest way is to go find out what happened to American Indians, what benefits they got, and track it. In my new book called Power Numbers, it takes you through every one of those steps. You can follow it. If you pick that up, you can come right to reparations very quickly because it will be very difficult for the government to deny black folk for the same thing they're giving the Indians. So when you hear people talking about how bad off Indians are, first thing you say, fine. If Indians that bad off, put us as black folk in the same status with the Indians. We'll take that. Because see, right, what Indians got, see, first of all, nobody declared Indians to be a nation. Indians declared themselves to be a nation. They declared themselves to be a nation all the way up until about 1832 when Supreme Court Justice Marshall said, okay, I'll recognize you as a nation. We never declared ourselves to be a nation. We've always tried to do just the opposite of what the Indians did. Once they became a nation, they drew up a constitution for themselves. We never had a constitution. And what the Indians did with that constitution is then to go to the United States government and say, we do not want to integrate. We did just the opposite. We integrated. And I can track everything right down, or we can follow the Indian model if you want to. And you can see, and all that's already built into the law, and there's a direct lineage between American Indians and black folk that you can follow very easily and get to reparations. But we need to have a model. And in my new book, I get that model to be on the stand in about another month. You get the Powernomics model that take you through all those steps of what they did throughout history, from the Blair Amendments and everything else. You can track them very easily, and it'd be very difficult for the United States government to deny you reparations when you only two people that have a constitutional relationship with this government is black folk and Indians. Just like Indians use what they call natural rights and lay a claim against the land, we should use natural law and lay a claim against our labor, misappropriated labor. The next level what you must do is move to a legal step. You need to form at the fourth level, get you a legal body right now, whether it's going to be pro bono or paid. And out of our convention, we should be able to raise some funds to set up a mass legal body that be ready to start serving suits based on those facts that you're going to find at the second level. And we start to find those, then we should have people going after suits. One side suing the different levels of government, other side suing the private sector to get reparation funds for black folk. Then at the last level, you need to set up, at the sixth level, you need to set up some kind of a pool, or resource, or retrieval agency that every time we get some benefits, we're going to a special fund that will be held for pooling and aggregating. Now, then out of that special agency, we break away into two groups, what I would recommend. One, you would have an economic development bank on the East Coast and an economic development bank on the West Coast. And what those banks would do is take most of the money you get and not give it to black folk as individuals. You put it into a massive bank where black folk can go draw that money to start low interest, get low interest loans or free monies to build businesses and industries throughout the United States. You also, if you track the Indians, you should try to get yourself some tax-free or tax-exempt land. Just like Indians can go grab any piece of land and federalize and put up a casino, you tell me you want to do the same thing as a black person, get tax-exempt statuses. We can go on and on. But there's a lot of things we can track. Go after the Indians. But the thing that's most important, I'm going to quit, is that you got to understand that reparations are an absolute necessity. We're going to get buried alive. We do not have enough to be able to compete in this society. And the further we get away from the civil rights movement, the worse things are going to get. And when people start talking about slavery, don't just talk about slavery. Talk about Jim Crow slavery and benign neglect. You got to understand what slavery was. Slavery is the illegitimate child of racism. Racism still exists. That's slavery. Because what racism does, racism keeps and maintains what was created by slavery. Now, racism is a competitive economic struggle between groups of people for power and wealth. And it's slavery, and racism never existed until the 16th century. And when slavery went out of existence, racism took over. Racism has gone from meaning slavery to being something biological. Then it moved on in about the 1800s. It turned to be something as a personal behavior or an attitude, and now a bias and a prejudice. Racism has nothing to do with attitudes, with prejudice, and with bias. Racism is a competitive group contest between people for race, resources, and for superiority. And racism is a race without a finish line. I thank you very much.
West Indies total slave imports of well over 2 million left a surviving slave population of only about 670,000. More than twice as many slaves were shipped to the island of Jamaica alone than all 13 North American colonies combined. The Caribbean was a slaughterhouse. In fact, the reason why there was more importation of slaves to these plantations is because they died so frequently. They were treated so badly, ate so poorly, that females never reached their menstrual cycles. They never actually started their menstrual cycles, so they couldn't reproduce, you see. And so many of them died, they had to import more. That's how treacherous it was, you lazy black folks that you are. Isn't that ironic, though? What's so ironic is black people run from the shame of feeling like they're perceived as lazy. I live with that so much that when I would go to hotels, I would leave it cleaner.
I brought to Prime Minister's attention the issue of reparations, indicating that Jamaica is involved in a process under the auspices of the Caribbean community to engage the UK on the matter.
I don't think reparations are the right answer. But the purpose of my visit is to look to the future.
In the 18th century, British merchants shipped around 3 million people from West Africa across the Atlantic to the Americas and sold them into slavery. They made £4 trillion from the unpaid labour alone. Portugal and Holland pioneered this slave route. Britain made a national fortune from it. Much of the Britain we know today was built with slave money. Ports, cities and canals. Even the Church of England has admitted making money from the slave business. By the 19th century, a fifth of the British elite had made their fortunes from slavery. Among them, David Cameron's distant cousin, General Sir James Duff. The Liverpool merchants who founded what's now Barclays Bank were slave traders. In 1833, when slavery was abolished, slave owners were paid £20 million in compensation for their loss of property. That's £2 billion today. More than 10 million people died as a direct result of the Atlantic slave trade, but the survivors got nothing. West Africa, nothing. Now 15 Caribbean states, including Jamaica, have launched the first united campaign for reparations from Britain, France and Holland. They have suggested compensation equal to the sum offered to slave owners in the 1830s, £2 billion. They also want an apology, recognition of the historic atrocity.
They hid in caves. My great-grandmother was born in a cave to make sure that she was not born as a slave. And that is what Britain perpetuated.
But the British government has refused to give either. David Cameron's first official visit to Jamaica has amplified calls on Britain to agree to reparations. Some argue that if Britain did pay, it wouldn't be the elite footing the bill but the tax-paying working classes. Others have said this was 200 years ago, it's in the past, why should I pay now? In Jamaica, slavery was followed with a century of colonialism.
Most of the land is still in the hands of Europeans.
When the Brits left in 1962, 80% of the population were functionally illiterate. Male literacy remains 4 points below the global average. 19% of the country live in poverty. When historic crimes have generational victims, who should
from post-traumatic slavery syndrome and post-traumatic slavery disorder as a result, a direct result of colonial slavery. And the colonial debt is still imposed on our countries, on our families today. So we still feel that pain. We suffer from discrimination, we suffer from racism, direct and indirect, in every walk of life, everywhere we go, in everything we do.
In the memory of those people who maybe were brought and sold and lived the life of slaves. And also number 2 is the reparations for the damage that had been done via slavery. 300 years of transatlantic slave trade has wreaked a terrible legacy.
Now, when we hear the word reparations, it doesn't mean begging anybody for money or compensation. It actually means repairing damage. So we deal with internal repair and we deal with external repair.
It's the man with the info. Whatever you want to know, come join the man with the info show. It's the info. It's the man with the info. Whatever you want to know, come join the man with the info show. It's the info. It's the info. Whatever you want to know, come join the man with the info show. It's the info. We got the info. Whatever you want to know, come join the man with the info show. It's the info man. You can call him information info man. Kicking knowledge all over this nation. Win, lose, or draw. You can bring your hate team, but if you want to win, please don't bring your debate team. We talking Japanese shogun, Aztecs, old mixing African dogun.